We're gonna crunch those stats. We're gonna talk about baseball, sticky stuff, and torpedo bats. We'll talk about it all. If you want good takes on baseball and life, just tune in to Ben and his lovely co-host, Ben and Meg. It's effectively wild.
Hello and welcome to episode 2333 of Effectively Wild, a baseball podcast from FanGraphs presented by our Patreon supporters. I am Ben Lindbergh of The Ringer, joined by Meg Rowley of FanGraphs. Hello, Meg.
Hello.
I've got good news and bad news about my Meet a Major Leaguer guy from last week, Christian Montes De Oca.
Yeah.
He is no longer a phantom major leaguer. So that's the good news, because when I highlighted him, he had been promoted but not gotten into a game and then got demoted again. And so he was in that phantom ball player category of he was an active player, but he never actually made his major league debut. I expressed hope and some confidence that he would eventually. And we didn't have to wait long. So this is the good news. The Diamondbacks got to call up a 27th man on Saturday.
Yeah.
They didn't have a traditional doubleheader, but they had a suspended game from Friday that they had to finish on Saturday in addition to the regularly scheduled game.
Yes.
And so they got a 27th man, and that man was Christian Montes De Oca.
Woo.
And unfortunately for the Diamondbacks, but fortunately for him, a couple pitchers got shelled in that game. And so the Diamondbacks were down 13-1 fairly early on, thanks to or no thanks to Ryan Nelson and Kendall Graveman. And so they called in Christian Montes De Oca, and he pitched great. He pitched 2 2/3 innings, no hits, no runs, just one walk, 2 strikeouts, just dominant debut. So that was the good news. Then some initial bad news was that he was back down again after that because he was just the 27th man. It was sort of a one-day thing. But then the good news again was that he got called up because Kendall Graveman, who had pitched poorly in that game, he had a hip thing. And so he went on the IL. And so they summoned Christian Montes De Oca back. Another bit of good news, but then another bit of bad news. This is a real emotional roller coaster.
Up and down.
Yeah, he was unavailable Monday because he reported an arm problem. Yeah. And could be bad, potentially. Doesn't seem good. He went for imaging, as did Justin Martinez of the Diamondbacks, which is, when it rains, it pours. I know it doesn't rain that much in your neck of the woods, but these days it's been bad for the Diamondbacks. So he's having an MRI because he had elbow discomfort, and Diamondbacks fans know that elbow discomfort often leads to bad things, as they have recently relearned. So it's said to be concerning, and I'll provide further updates when we have them. But hey, even if worst case, at least he is now officially a newly minted major leaguer. So that's something.
It is something. And, you know, especially given the path he took to get here. Yeah. Like, I don't want to downplay the something that it is. It's something, you know?
Yeah, it's something. So met a major leaguer even before he was officially a major leaguer, but now he is. So just wanted to close the loop on that one. Speaking of up and down relievers and following up on pitchers we talked about, Craig Kimbrel did in fact come up as we teased. We broke that news live or reacted to that news live on our most recent episode. And he came up and he had himself a Kimbrel-esque inning. Yeah. It was not a clean inning. It was a scoreless inning. He came in, he pitched a scoreless 7th, and he actually faced the minimum, but with some help. So he allowed a single and a walk in the inning, but there was a caught stealing, and then he helped himself out with a pickoff. And so he erased both of those runners and also got a strikeout. And that was that. So there was some traffic. It was busy, but he got out of it. And then he got designated first time after that.
Yeah, sure did.
After we were teasing, oh, he's coming. And then after he had this heartfelt reunion with Atlanta, they kind of made a big deal of like, oh, Craig Kimbrel's back after all these years. And then gone after a single inning and designated for assignment, and subsequently has elected free agency. So any team can now enjoy the Craig Kimbrel experience.
Yeah, and I bet they're lining up, Ben. I bet they're like, oh, we want to. Do we feel like the team made a big deal out of it? Did the team?
Not a huge deal. It was like social media. It was
we're marching upon, right? And so I always wonder in moments like that, like social media professionals are busy people, and front office folks are busy people. And so I don't imagine they necessarily have endless time to like sit down and confer. Yeah. But do you think that the front office folks saw the post about it and were like, oh, but we're probably going to just like cut him loose after this?
I wonder whether they cringed a little or whether whether there was any caution. Like, let's not make too big a deal about the Craig Kimbrel comeback because it might not last that long. It's kind of like the scenario we discussed recently on an episode when we said that instead of having the ceremonial one-day contract to retire with a team, that you should actually maybe be forced to play in a game. That's kind of what happened here. I mean, I don't know if he's going to retire, but maybe that's the end of his time with Atlanta. And it was nice, like a little full circle moment for his career, but then it didn't last that long, the good vibes for him.
Put it this way, things at this stage in his career, based on what we have most recently seen, it could have gone so much worse, like it. Yeah. It didn't go badly. I think it's fine in that regard, but there is sort of a bit of awkwardness when you're, extolling the virtues of his return, and then your follow-up post has to be, we have designated Craig Kimbrel for assignment. And it's, I don't want to make too much of this. Like, this sort of thing happens often, so it's not really a big deal. I don't think that there was any like negligence on the part of the social team or anything like that. But it is funny, just given the propensity of the Braves to break their own news. They tend to be the ones who let we've reached an extension with this player and he has decided to donate his dog to the Braves charity and that sort of thing. So that part does make it a little bit funny to me. Just a smidgen. It's sort of funny.
Yeah, you'd think it would be worthwhile, though, for there to be some communication in those different departments. Just like, hey, let's tone down the celebration just a little bit because this might be short-lived. I mean, I guess the signing a one-day contract ceremonially, it is similarly brief. But in this case, he probably hoped for a little more. And maybe he'll get more elsewhere. He has decent AAA stats this year. Yeah. He doesn't have the stuff, obviously, that he once did.
Doesn't have the stuff, man.
I guess the Braves, they have really already probably ruined my bold preseason projection or prediction about Craig Kimbrel because now that's sort of spoiled. I love this bit where I bring up a preseason bold prediction and you have no recollection of it.
It's a bit, it's a bit. Yes. I actually have them all stored up here. They're in a little lockbox in my brain.
Yeah, not a bit. It was that the Braves would finish out of first place by, I think, the same number of games, at least as many games as Craig Kimbrel pitched in, and they lost, basically saying that they were going to fall prey to the same fate that many of Craig Kimbrel's previous employers did, where they kind of trusted him in high leverage spots and he blew a bunch of games and maybe it cost them. That's not going to happen here unless they bring him back, unless he gets on the Jesse Chavez Express and starts to just coming back over and over and over again. But I guess the Braves already kind of took themselves out of contention for first place, at least as things stand right now. In fact, I was just looking. When you were away about a month ago, May 7th, episode 2318, I brought on a guy named Brandon, who was both an Orioles and Braves fan. And
how did that work?
Then also talked to Austin, who is a White Sox and Rockies fan, because I wanted to take the temperature of a couple of people who were fans of teams that were off to terrible starts and were having horrible seasons. And when I talked to Brandon, the Orioles were the worst team. The Braves had started terribly, but then seemed to have righted the ship. And the tone of that conversation was, I think, things are really dire for the Orioles, but the Braves, things are looking up. They'll probably be okay. seemed to be rounding into form, and Acuna was coming back, and they were at least nearing 500, I think, at the time. Well, since then, I think the most recent game when we recorded that interview was May 5th. And since then, the Orioles have actually been better than the Braves because it's gotten bad again for Atlanta, and it's still been bad for Baltimore, but not quite as bad. I think since May 6th on, the Orioles are 13-18, bad. The Braves are 12-19, slightly worse. So it has not actually turned out that at least one of those teams would be okay. The Orioles have been a little bit better than they had been to that point, but the Braves have sunk back into sucking. So, thoughts go out to Brandon.
They have sunk back into sucking. My goodness, what a sentence.
And I guess Craig Kimbrel is not going to be the answer for them.
Probably
unfortunately.
Not.
Yeah. Well, speaking of maybe more notable promotions from the minor leagues.
Everyone's like, yeah, we definitely came here to talk about Craig Kimbrel, who is not currently employed as opposed to the top prospect in baseball making his big league debut.
We led with Christian Montes De Oca, and, maybe you were expecting Roman Anthony banter, but we got there. That's the effectively wild difference. Not only Roman Anthony, but also Jacob Misiorowski of the Brewers.
Yep. It's Misiorowski, I think.
Is it? I looked at a YouTube video and the broadcaster said Misiorowski, but I don't know that was right. Anyway,
I don't know. I think it's Misiorowski.
Would have guessed that, but he throws really hard, regardless of how one pronounces his name. We'll probably become more familiar with the pronunciation now that he is a big leaguer or about to be. So that's something to look forward to, him pumping in 103 for as long as that lasts, I guess. But also, I'm always the doomsayer when it comes to pitchers who throw really hard. I've been burdened many times before, as those pitchers have. So I can't get attached. I get all invested in Christian Montes De Oca, and then suddenly he's going for imaging. I mean, this is what happens with pitchers. It's just hard to get invested in their success.
Him and Miz about the same in terms of their
more or
understood ceiling.
Roman Anthony also up for the Red Sox, much anticipated top prospect, and fresh off of his 497-foot homer, which is he absolutely crushed it. And then Wilyer Abreu went on the IL, and so there's a space for Roman Anthony now. That's kind of punctuating your promotion. That's getting called up in style. Just hey, I hit an almost 500-foot homer. This is the longest home run on record anywhere this season. Yeah. It almost feels like something like that should just be an automatic promotion. Like if you do something that spectacular, your team is just obligated to call you up. And maybe it's the Miz. I'm just going to say the Miz. I
think a lot of people call him Miz.
Yeah, I think they do. But that. So
I don't think you're speaking out of turn there. Yeah.
But if you throw 103 as a starter, maybe that's automatic promotion. And if you hit a 497-foot homer that is longer than any home run that a big leaguer has hit this season, maybe that's just automatic homer. Yeah. It's like the Bill James signature significance concept, the idea that you do one thing in a game, or you just like hit a ball so hard that, someone hits a ball 115 miles per hour or something. It's like, oh, okay, this guy's got at least that big league tool.
Right.
And so there should be just a threshold where it's like, all right, you get called up at least for a day. And then if you're bad, maybe they have to send you back down. Except, well, I don't want it to be tied to pitch speeds because I don't want people to be trying to throw 103. So I don't want to encourage that. But maybe hitting an extremely long home run, I guess that's probably safe, or more safe at least. So that was one of those moments where it's like, oh, this is a big leaguer, whether you've officially anointed him or not.
Right.
He just hit that ball far enough that I think he's a big leaguer.
Well, and it was one of those things where, I think there had been calls for Roman Anthony's promotion. Mm-hmm. There had been wondering why a floundering Red Sox team had not already promoted him. And there's like a positional, as has been sort of the theme of the Red Sox season. I'm sure they're thrilled with this, but, there's sort of this question of like, well, where do you play him, right?
Yeah.
Because he's a corner guy. Well, they have corner guys who they like. He's stretched in center. Plus, you have Rafael anyway. You don't really want to put him there. So, like, where do you put him? And then Abreu got hurt. And so it sort of resolved that question, at least temporarily. And to be clear, I'm not saying, like, oh, you shouldn't play the best prospect in baseball because, like, what will you do in your corners? Yeah. You know, they've had this, like, constant shuffling that they've had to do. They've had to do so many different infield configurations, and Christian Campbell's a first baseman now, which is fine because he can't really play other positions anyway. But, like, you know, there's this question, like, what do you do with him? And then he hits a big home run, and also Abreu gets hurt, and so then what you do with him is you promote him. But I want to throw down a challenge. I would like to. I'm throwing down a gauntlet. I'm asking us to rise above. I think that the Roman Empire and Anthony jokes have been a little easy. You know, I think they've been, I won't say they're cheap. We get to have our fun, you know, it's a hard world out there. We should have our fun. But also, you know how much those folks wrote down? There's so much history to be had in there. There are other jokes, you know, I'm just saying, crack a book, find a new angle, and then come to me with your Roman Anthony jokes. Because I don't think we've seen the best that everybody has, you know? And it's just, there's never a bad time to revisit the classics. You know, we can do more here is my point, you know? And I understand that in some ways you're limited by the fact that, like, you might think to yourself, well, who do I know among the ancients who would give me grist for this mill? Who would have? And you're like, oh, but I can't look to Herodotus. He was Greek. Guess what? There are other writers. There's other history. There are other jokes. Go find them. Go find those jokes and then bring them to me. Okay.
So you haven't found them. You're not bringing them. You're just.
I have, but I feel ghost sharing them. No, I'm just saying. No, I haven't made any great jokes. I'm not saying that my jokes have been good. My jokes have been absent.
You've refrained from making
because they've all been too easy, Ben. They've been too easy, you know. And so I've like, no, I'm not saying it's beneath me. Yeah, I laugh at all kinds of things. Last night when Dominic Canzone came in and hit a home run to tie the Mariners D-backs game before they not quite promptly. I was like, I'm getting sick and feel very tired, and I'm in this time zone and wish you all would wrap it up. The only time where I've been like, sure, zombie run or whatever. I'm not serious. I'm ill. But I made a joke on Blue Sky that Brigham had left it in his can hit zone. That's not a good joke. Yes. I made it anyway. I was like, this is what I have right now. You know, this is where I'm at spiritually. But I think we could all be in a better comedy place. And I look forward to us reaching it, you know?
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate
robust history.
That encouragement. Yeah, it's sometimes knowing when not to make the bad joke is more important than making the good joke. Yeah. Sometimes it's just better to sit on it until you have better material. So we'll take that to heart.
You can work on it. And I understand that we all look at social media as our big open mic, but you don't have a tight 10. You don't have a tight baseball 10. Go work on your baseball 10.
Well, we look forward to seeing what Roman Anthony has. We know he can hit 500-ish foot home runs, so that's exciting. Look forward to that. And we'll see if he can right the Red Sox or at least contribute to that effort.
Did you watch his debut game? Did you watch the game?
I saw the highlights, but I didn't watch the full game.
It looked miserable there. Misty the whole time, you know, like a man emerging from myth. The fans were so frustrated with the strike zone in extras that I was a little worried that they were going to start throwing things. And, you know, was it that the zone wasn't very good? They had a point. Sometimes, not all the time, but some of the time. But also, they were clearly cold and wet, and that combination makes people cranky. And they were ready. They wanted to win, Ben, and they didn't. They didn't win. You know.
Nope. But hopefully, for their sake and Roman Anthony's, they'll win more with him than they won without. And speaking of promotions and demotions, sticking with the theme here, Jhonkensy Noel, Big Christmas, got sent down. Yeah. I had not noticed how bad he had been.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So last year when he came up and delighted us all with his nickname and his game, he was an above average hitter in his first exposure to the big leagues, about 200 plate appearances. He hit a lot of bombs. He hit 13 home runs. Guardians need pop. It seems like, here's the guy. Here's the answer.
Yeah.
He had a 118 WRC plus. He was clearly going to have to hit to be valuable, but it seemed like, maybe he will hit.
The less said about his defense, the better.
Yeah. He was just 22. Then this season, and I know it was kind of part-time play, I guess, because, well, he didn't deserve full-time play given the way he hit. He had 107 plate appearances before he got sent down over 46 games. His WRC plus was 4. 4. Yeah.
Number 4.
You don't usually see a single-digit WRC plus. That is not a good sign.
No, certainly not over 100 plate appearances.
No, yeah. He hit 146, 168, 223.
Yeah.
He walked 3 times and struck out 34 times.
Yeah.
That's not the ratio that you want, or the strikeout rate, period.
No.
Didn't hit for much power, obviously didn't hit for much anything. Sub 200 BABIP, sub 100 isolated power. Rough. Very rough. So he got sent down. I hope he'll be back. I hope that he can improve upon those numbers in this season or future seasons. But I did have to check just where that ranks. Minimum 100 plate appearances. It's basically, it's a top 20, or I guess I should say bottom 20 offensive season of all time. So, or not all time. I looked. I looked for the 30 team era to try to just be kind to him, going back to 1998, and I'm disregarding number 1 on the list, which is Randy Johnson, the pitcher, who he threw enough to just barely get 100 plate appearances. He had 104 in 1999 for the Diamondbacks, and he had a negative 43 WRC plus. Pitchers bad at hitting. He hit 124, 124, 165 that year. But if you remove the unit from the list, I think he's the only pitcher who shows up here because most pitchers didn't qualify for 100 plate appearances or more. He would be 20th worst. So it was bad. We've seen some small sample, terrible performances before. In fact, you don't even have to go to a different team. I remember talking on this very podcast about another Cleveland Guardian, Cam Gallagher, in 2023.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that Cam Gallagher season? That was a negative 18 WRC plus, which would be the worst on this list, one of the worst ever. He hit 126, 154, 168 in 56 games and 149 plate appearances. And, he was a catcher, which made it a little bit better, but not that much better. But that's his last taste of the big leagues, it seems. So, hopefully John Kenzie can play his way back up and Christmas will come again. But this was a coal in his stocking performance, unfortunately.
I mean, I just sat here and I was like,
you did
everyone
just
should tell better
jokes. And just then, immediately,
And then I was like, did I paint us into a corner? And the answer is yes.
Yeah, I guess so.
He has not been hitting particularly well. I think that when a guy has this kind of profile, it can happen. This can happen. 2.8% walk rate is wild. That's something. That's really quite something. And again, he's not a good defender out there, at all. So he just has to hit. He's a low floor, low ceiling guy. But to your point, when he came up, he was very good at the thing that they were most lacking, right? They really needed more thump, and he could provide it. And he had 13 home runs in 198 plate appearances. That's not nothing. He was worth half a win, despite really just rancid defense. So there's that. But also, this is a club that has aspirations, and that he doesn't fit them right now. So there you go.
Well, In happier news, let's talk about a fairly recently arrived big leaguer who has become a sensation. And I speak, of course, of Denzel Clarke.
Oh, my goodness. And this one to center field. Denzel Clarke on the move back after he stepped towards home plate and makes another catch.
Oh, my God.
Back-to-back weeks where he wins the electric play of the week, and he's already on the leaderboard for this week.
You go ahead and book it. I've heard the list. I've seen the list of the greatest catches you're ever going to see in your life. If you don't have room for this one on your list, we're watching two different sports.
We talked about Denzel Clarke not long after he came up because we were worried that he would displace Shea Langoliers, the A's catcher on the A's sprint speed leaderboard, because we were tickled by the fact that Shea Langoliers, the catcher, was seemingly the fastest player on the A's and was faster than their previous center fielder, J.J. Bleday. And then Denzel Clarke came up, and we thought, well, it was fun while it lasted, but it's over. As long as he lasts, once he qualifies, he is going to displace Shea Langoliers on that leaderboard. And in fact, he has. That has come to pass. Now that he qualifies, Shea Langoliers 28.4 feet per second, Denzel Clarke 29.2. And he put that speed on display in a spectacular play that was made on Monday. A home run robbery that, look, some home run robberies, they're not as thrilling as others. Sometimes it's just a tall guy in a short fence, and that's all it is. And it's Aaron Judge in front of the short porch just holding his arm up. No shots at Aaron, but he's very large and sometimes a little less, athleticism, just not quite as much acrobatics required.
Right.
This was gravity defiant. This was incredible timing.
Yes.
This was one of the best catches that we've ever seen. This was amazing.
We felt like Denzel Clarke was going to be a very good, a plus center fielder. He was a small school college guy, right? So there was room to grow. When Eric wrote his report for the A's list, he noted that he is arguably a plus center field defender right now. His feel for running to spots has improved. He has elite top end speed. He takes bold risks with dives, and he did some absolutely ridiculous stuff around the outfield wall during his stint in the Arizona Fall League. With his size, athleticism, and bold creativity, Clarke is going to have a very long big league career as a premium center field defender. So this is an important part of the profile for Clarke, a carrying tool, because he has big raw power, but also, he has a huge frame.
Yeah.
The swing is poorly timed. It can be kind of awkward. He can't pull the ball. He has these big, long levers. So it's what's he going to look like at the plate? He might be just like a 30% career strikeout guy. But when you can do this, people live with that, It's just it has to be one of the very best catches I've ever seen. Yeah. And I think that Anaheim is a sneaky place for home run robbery, a sneaky good place for home run robbery, despite not having super short walls everywhere. And some of that is Mike Trout in his prime was very good at home run robbery, but he also plays in a park that seems to kind of facilitate that in center. Julio has had some good plays out there. So and I'm not saying that to diminish what Clarke did. I'm saying that even within the context of a ballpark where it seems like guys can do this, it's one of the best catches I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Yeah. The combination of vert with reach is really what makes it so amazing, because he gets up really high, but he does have to reach out pretty far.
Yeah. That's the thing. It was way gone. It wasn't like one of these home run robberies where the ball is just going to scrape over the fence.
No.
That thing, when he retrieved it, it was several feet seemingly over the fence. And he used the full extent of his wingspan as a 6'4" guy. I mean, I was just denigrating the tall guy and short fence combination. Right. But that was this, but not really, because this was acrobatic. He was clinging to the wall and just had a lot of airtime and was just almost sitting on the fence briefly.
Right.
And then just reached way over with his back to home plate, just amazing. Like, and then he came down and he was pumped immediately as well. He should have been. But everyone else was just stunned, which I think really sold it even more for me. Like, Nolan Schanuel, who hit the ball for the Angels, his face, like, it was just blank, like with his mouth open a little bit, as if he had just seen God or something.
Right.
And then Grant Holman.
Sorry, I have to interrupt on Shanwell's behalf because, like, I feel really badly for him, right? It's such a weird thing to be on the receiving end of one of these highlights because, like, he can't say anything but, wow, that was amazing, right? Like, he can't be a poor sport about it. But this is a guy who, like, despite all of his standing, hasn't really gotten any stronger, you know? Like, it's very strange, especially for his position, like how little thump there seems to be in the bat. And then he does this, which should just be a no-doubter to the one of the deepest parts of the park. And Denzel Clarke is like, no, sorry, no. Like, what? The poor guy.
How far do I have to hit it? Come on. This is what I'm supposed to do. Yeah. I have read, I mean, I've seen that he has improved his swing speed and his exit speeds to some extent because he did like a bat speed training overload, underload thing, seemingly on his own, not
because he was like, I'm tired of standing.
Yeah, I guess he didn't do his I'll just stand all off-season training regimen. He tried to swing harder, and I guess that worked to some extent. It doesn't seem to have been done in concert with the Angels. He kind of took it upon himself to do that. But if I were playing for the Angels, I might take my development myself too. That might not be a bad idea. But it hasn't really paid dividends for him, as you're saying. Like, he's swinging harder, he's hitting the ball a little bit harder, but he has not hit for more power at all to this point, at least. Now, his expected stats have improved. And so maybe when Denzel Clarke is not out there, things will normalize and you know, keep hitting it there, and generally good things will happen. So totally. Under the hood, some improvements, and he's cut down on his strikeout rate too. But to be slugging, you know, 385 as a first baseman, and he's making it work. Like, he's getting on base, and you know, he can play first. Like, it's okay. But yes, it probably is extra frustrating. So he was stunned. And then Grant Holman, who was the pitcher for the A's, so close to hold, man. Could have had another nominative determinism case, but he didn't even, like, usually with a pitcher who's saved like that, spared a home run. Yeah, they'll be all smiles, they'll be grinning, they'll be like pointing at the fielder to say, oh, you know, all credit to you, you saved my bacon here. Yeah, Holman also was just stunned, like his hands were on his head, as if it really was just some sort of like rapture situation. Like, the ball got raptured, like people were awed in just the old school sense of the word. Like, no one knew how to react to this other than Clarke himself, who was just instantly pumped.
I'm watching it again, and it's just so incredible. Like, it's just such an incredible. The different poses he can be in at various points of this play, if you break it down into like discrete still images, is spectacular. There's the reach. There's the flip. He like looks like he's sitting down on air at one point. Yeah. The fact that he didn't tumble over the wall is like kind of spectacular on its own. Yeah. I'm yelling. Sorry. I don't mean to be so loud, but it's just like, I can't imagine. They're so good, man. I can't imagine being able to do this. And every big leaguer can't do this. I don't, you know, like, but I can't imagine being able to do this. This is the play equivalent of a World Series ring, where for like the first 2 months after I'd done it, I would tell every person I encountered on the street that I had done this. Yeah. I would just be like, did you see what I did? Hey, I'm Denzel Clarke. We haven't met before, but by the way, have you seen what I did?
Just look at my phone. I have the GIF just on a loop here. Yeah.
Here it is. Yeah, here's Grant Holman's face.
He didn't get a good jump particularly. In fact, his first step was in, I think. Maybe he figured Nolan Schanuel. I don't know. But wow. But he had
Schanuel burn.
Yeah, I know. But then he had to go back. And so the route wasn't the best, I guess. But once he got going in the right direction, he timed it perfectly. I wonder whether he could have like intercepted it closer to the fields or whether he let it get that far out.
I don't know.
On purpose. I don't know. But it was perfect, aesthetically speaking, at least.
Yeah.
And it immediately reminded me of the Gary Matthews Jr. catch. And then you mentioned Trout. I saw people comping it to a home run robbery Trout made in 2015, which looked pretty similar. There was a Devon White grab in 1994 that looked a lot like this. So there have been others in this genre, but this was special.
Apparently, I did Toronto radio earlier today, and Blake Murphy said that this had a 95% catch probability according to StatCast. Huh. Do you believe that?
No, but StatCast, it can be a little wonky, I think, when it comes to like balls at the wall or right around the wall. It's kind of hard to quantify there. But I did see, I think someone in our Discord group mentioned that he has a 100% catch rate on plays with a catch probability between 30 and 60%. And there've been
amazing.
Like 8 of them. And so
that's incredible.
For most players, that's like a coin flip. And for him, it's just automatic. And I feel good because we did on Hang Up and Listen on Monday, we did a bonus segment about quantifying defense. And it was sort of centered, no pun intended, on Pete Crow Armstrong. And I did bring up Denzel Clarke in that segment before the catch just to say, hey, look what this guy's been doing. Because even before that catch, he was setting the StatCast leaderboards on fire. And now, so he's played 125 innings. He just came up, a couple weeks ago, right? And he has already recorded 7 runs, according to StatCast defensive metric fielding run value. He's at +7 already. I had to lower the innings minimum even to get him to show up on the Savant leaderboard here. And he is already up there at +7. Like Pete Crow Armstrong is at +11 and Cedar Rafaela is at +10. But these guys have like between 500 and 600 innings.
Right.
So like on a rate basis, Denzel Clarke's on pace for the most spectacular defensive season we've ever seen.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's going to continue to field at this pace. It's weird. We don't talk about fielding as a pace all that often, but like this player profile, because he hasn't hit to this point.
Right.
He's at 216, 245, 294. Yeah, 50 WRC plus. He's hitting like Zach Greinke. He's hitting like Jeff Mathis. That's not great. And yet he has 0.6 WAR already in 16 games.
Yeah.
And it's the weirdest profile. Like he's on pace, according to the FanGraphs on pace leaderboards. If he were to play in every game from here on out, he would have himself a 4.1 WAR season. So he's basically playing at a 6 WAR pace per 162 while hitting with a 50 WRC plus. And we just talked about John Kenzie Noel's strikeout to walk ratio.
Yeah.
Denzel Clarke's hold my beer. He's at 29 Ks and 1 walk. Oh. So he has struck out in more than half of his plate appearances. So you could say that offensively, he has looked overmatched. And yet defensively, he has been more than a match. Could he keep up this profile? Like what will probably happen is that his defense will remain good, but it won't be this off the charts. He won't have this many highlight reel plays in a short span of time. And then probably the bat will be a bit better, one would hope. Like the depth charts project him for an 81 WRC plus. He had a 121 WRC plus in AAA before he called up. He's not completely offensively inept. And so, now he did not hit a home run in AAA this season in 31 games, but he did hit 13 last year and stole 36 bases. Like he's got a little pop. He's got some speeds. He actually walked almost as often as he struck out in AAA. So I don't think the bat will be this bad. So it'll probably just be a bit more normal. He'll come back to earth on both sides of the ball. But can you imagine a player who's like almost unplayable with the bat, except for the fact that he's so good with the glove that he's actually a star? I mean, we've seen less pronounced versions of this profile. Sure. Obviously, there are guys whose strength is not hitting. I mean, Cedar Rafaela maybe being one of them, although I think he's gotten a little unlucky. But like, imagine a 50 WRC plus player who was like actually a star level player because he was that big a difference maker on defense.
Seems great. Let's do it. We want different kinds of guys, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I will say that, like, that is a profile that has the potential to be quite frustrating to fans because, like, you know, doesn't it always feel like that's the guy who ends up in like the bottom of the ninth with 2 on and 2 outs and you need him to just get a hit to walk you off and he can't do it. So like I don't want to overstate the case, but you know, taking runs away has value, man. Like it's not, you want him to be able to add too, but if you can field like this, and you don't, and I think the important thing to keep in mind with someone like Clarke is that, like, yes, him being capable of a spectacular play like this is like so exciting and obviously has tremendous value. He doesn't have to be doing this every time to be a very valuable center fielder, right? And, you know, you can take runs away before they get to the wall. So I think that you're right. The most likely scenario is that he starts to hit a little bit better and his defense levels out to something that is still very, very good, but perhaps not like this every single night. But I don't know. Give me an extreme profile. I like those.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, the premise of that hang-up bonus segment was basically, hey, we can measure defense better than we used to be able to, and there's a little less uncertainty when someone like PCA comes along and is elite. Of course, everyone knows he was going to be a good glove. It's more the bat that has been the surprise. But even so, you can have a little more confidence than you could even for fairly recent players like Andrew Jones, where there's this debate raging about, was he actually like one of the greatest defenders of all time, or is he a little overrated, and are the defensive stats maybe just a little too high on his supply? Because that makes all the difference for his Hall of Fame case. Like, it looks like he's probably going to get in. He has a couple more shots at it, but that's been a big conversation point. And he's a fairly recent player, and so even more distant players, I think directionally those stats are correct over the course of a career, certainly, but you can't be quite as confident in a smaller sample. And we used to talk about, even like while this podcast was being recorded, we would talk about, oh, you need a full season, or maybe you even need 3 seasons of defensive stats. And now I think you can be more confident in a smaller sample, at least as to how you're measuring performance in that sample. It's not always predictive, but I do think that StatCast defensive stats are the gold standard for defense at this point, and certainly for outfielders. And I think something like DRS or Baseball Prospectus' stat, I think maybe they can add some value. I still look at a range, but if I had to take one, especially for outfielders, I would take away a FRV, whatever we're calling it, just because it has better inputs. It's less garbage in and presumably less garbage out, because the big unknowns were always, well, where did he start that play and how far did he have to go to get it? And now we know those things because those things are tracked. The difference is, or the reason why it can still be a little misleading in a small sample, is that you do need the opportunities. Like Denzel Clarke needed this ball to be there in order to make that spectacular play. And so he could have had that talent and just not gotten to show it off if Nolan hadn't cooperated and placed that ball right where he placed it. So over a small sample, you can get an inordinate number of those opportunities, those plays that differentiate a really fine fielder from an average fielder, because most guys are going to get to most plays out there. Most plays are fairly routine. And then there's a smaller subset that are really like the potential 5-star catches that separate the wheat from the chaff. And you might just happen to get a lot of those and make the most of it. Credit to you, but also you can't make those plays unless they're available to you, essentially. So that's why he will probably regress, is that he just won't get as many opportunities to show off these defensive skills that he has. But it is nice to look at that and say, yeah, that matches the eye test. And the eye test wasn't always reliable for fielders either, because sometimes the best fielders make the hardest plays look routine. And so even watching it, if you're not taking in the entire play and, oh, how far he had to go, sometimes the guys who make the amazing diving catch, well, they had to dive because they got a bad jump or they were slow, and someone else just, you know, PCA, he cruises. He's just sometimes he's just there, and you're surprised that he's there, but it doesn't even look like it was that hard for him. So that's why defensive stats can still mislead us to some extent, but I think it's better than it has been.
Oh, yeah. I think that we are in a much better position regardless of the stat, I think, at this point. But yeah, I still think that having some amount of caution is prudent. I think that looking at all of the available public stats, if they're all directionally aligned, I think that that's instructive. If one is sort of out of sync with the others, it can provide useful information because they are, to your point, like they are using different inputs potentially. And so it might sort of illuminate a part of a guy's defense where, you know, somebody has a blind spot or what have you. And being able to look at it over a while, I think helps. And then I think, look, you got to look at the guy. You know, like you're right that the eye test can fool you, but I also think that there is something to sitting and watching a guy and seeing how you sort of understand his defense, how it washes over you. And unfortunately, I do think this is an area where sometimes it can be more instructive to like be able to get a live look. Because to your point, like, especially on a broadcast, like they might not show you the full play, you know? And so being able to actually sit there and watch, like, from when the ball leaves the bat to, you know, whatever fielding the fielder has to do. Like, I think that provides some value, and then trying to triangulate between all of those things puts you in a good spot to at least have a sense of like not only good defender or no, but it can help you start to establish degrees of difference between players. So that's what I think about that.
Ken Arneson, the longtime baseball blogger who now works for Weather Applied, which is the company that supplies that weather data that goes into StatCast. He put on Blue Sky that Denzel Clarke made them revisit the max height that a ball could be caught in their calculations, like just because he got up there so high and vertically he could have reached higher. It was more laterally that he reached. But because he's so big and he was on top of the wall, like I guess in their model, they just have a max height that, no ball could be caught if it's higher than this. And he could have maybe broken that potentially. So it was that type of play that just makes you reevaluate everything.
Yep. Pretty cool.
While we're talking about defense, I do have to acknowledge the many messages I received when Jazz Chisholm of the Yankees was mic'd up and made a throwing error while he was he was being interviewed by the broadcast. It's not the first time that this has happened, that a fielder has flubbed something while mic'd up and being talked to during a game, which, as you all know, I loathe. And so any time this happens, not that I'm rooting against Jazz Chisholm, but there's some part of this is satisfying to me just because it leads to a whole round of, why are we doing this? What are we doing? Why are we bothering these players while they're trying to play? I don't know if he messed up because he was being interviewed, but can't have helped, I guess, to have been mulling over a question just before a ball is hit to you. And it was a tough play, and errors happen even when guys aren't mic'd up. And so I don't know whether eventually we'll have enough of a sample, probably, unfortunately, where we can actually look at error rates while guys are mic'd up. And we'll see if they actually are more prone to making errors. Maybe I'll do that analysis and that'll drive a stake into the heart of the live in-game player interview on field. Because if players think that they're going to screw up, they're more likely to embarrass themselves on national television, then maybe they'll be less likely to do it, whatever little stipend, whatever little bonus they get for appearing. It just won't be worth it. And just as he's the kind of guy who I would want mic'd up. If someone is going to be mic'd up, he's an entertaining talker. He's an engaging guy, but I still hate it. So
not him.
Not him.
Just the exercise you participated in.
Don't hate the player. Hate the in-game.
Yeah. That might be the episode title. I am not convinced that even a very thorough statistical analysis would dissuade players from participating in that if they are already inclined to do so, though, Ben. I'm not optimistic, because here's the thing. They don't think they're going to commit an error. You know, they're like, that's a problem for other people, not for me. I wouldn't do that. I bet that the guys who commit errors are still likely to go on the next time they're asked.
Maybe.
That's because, you know, there's a confidence that you have to do the thing. So.
Okay. I wanted to highlight two weird plays involving baseballs. I mean, I guess most of the plays that we discuss involve baseballs. Pretty much all of them, in fact, or a whole lot of them. But two that involved baseballs that were non-standard, were not really the typical plays involving baseballs. On Friday, there was one where a ball was thrown from the stands into the field of play, and it was kind of confusing. And then on Saturday, Ryan Weathers of the Marlins got pegged in the head by his catcher, Nick Fortes, who was just throwing down to second, as catchers do after pitchers complete their warm-up, and they turn and they walk off the mound, and Weathers did that, and Fortes, he threw down to second, and Weathers was in the way. His head was, and it was bad. He was down for a little while, and he did stay in the game. Yeah, and he pitched a few innings, and the first inning went fine, but then he felt not so great eventually. So he said he was fortunate it hit him in the top of the head and not the back of the head. And he had an 8-pitch first inning, but then he got taken out after the third for what was called precautionary reasons. After he threw 57 pitches, gave up 4 runs, and they said he'd undergo further evaluation. He said, I just felt very disconnected out there a little bit, just with just all that adrenaline left me. It's kind of like that episode of SpongeBob where everything's on fire inside of his brain. I just felt like I was in pure chaos after that happened. So it was just kind of the right time to come out of the game there. Or maybe the right time would have been initially, immediately. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because Nick Fortes was sort of upset about that happening too. Like, he felt bad about it. The Marlins eventually won in extra innings, but that was weird. That was a weird and sort of scary play. We more often see like the Eric Chavez play where a fielder, maybe they threw it around the horn or something, and someone's throwing it back to the pitcher, or it's just like a lob back to the pitcher, and they're not looking, and they maybe get hit in the head or the beans or something, and it's kind of a funny gif and no one gets hurt. But this is less frequent for this to happen on like a real throw with some mustard on it.
I found it to be completely wild that he was allowed to stay in the game. And now he's on the 60-day IL, although that's because of a lat strain, not because of anything related to the pitch he took off the head. I just, he fell to the ground. You can't just let him go back out there. What are they thinking? I was totally flummoxed by it. I thought it was irresponsible. I'm like, he got hit on the head. He got hit on the head hard, and you can't be messing around with that. Like, they don't have someone who can call down and be like, hey, you got to take him out.
Yeah, I don't know.
I know he was the scheduled starter and everything, and scratching a guy that late is suboptimal, but you know what else is suboptimal? A concussion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it is sort of surprising. I guess he probably said he was fine, and then he pitched well initially, and I guess they thought, well, dodged a bullet there. But yeah, he got hit hard enough in a place where usually it's just, better be careful. Better run this guy through the protocols or something.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Wild.
Yeah.
Wild stuff.
Well,
did not care for it.
Also wild was this play a game between the Braves and the Giants on Friday. And there was a ball that was thrown from the stands onto the field. I'll send this to you if you haven't seen it, and we'll link to these things on the show page, of course.
Line drive to right. Yaz has got it. He's coming in. Here's the throw home. It is not in time. And where did the other ball come from?
Came out of the upper deck. Some clown threw the baseball onto the field.
Wow.
I have never seen that.
Oh, whoa.
Someone just threw a ball into the field of play on a sac fly. So it was a sac fly situation in the 4th inning, bases loaded, 1 out. Sean Murphy hit a ball to right field, and Matt Olson scored as Mike Yastrzemski's throw, a 1-hopper, was coming in for the Braves' first run. But almost at the same time, I guess it was well-timed by whoever threw this, but just as Patrick Bailey was getting ready to receive the throw from Yastrzemski, another ball bounces onto the field and then toward the pitcher's mound. Apparently it was thrown from the upper deck.
Yeah.
And the umpires conferred to discuss what to do, but they didn't end up doing anything because nothing really affected anything.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it changed the outcome of the play.
No, I don't think it did. And Bob Melvin, Giants manager, said, that's a first. I've never seen that before. He's seen a lot of baseball.
Yeah.
I don't know where it came from. I don't know what the rule is. I think everybody was a little surprised by it. It didn't affect the play, but it was extremely odd to see another baseball come on the field. And I was just thinking that is certainly rare. Almost nothing is unprecedented, but it is quite uncommon. Is it surprising that that doesn't happen more often? Because, like, you can bring a baseball into a baseball stadium. You can buy a baseball at a ballpark. Is it surprising that there aren't more yahoos who just throw? It kind of is, right? Because
I was just about to say, I'm honestly shocked that this doesn't happen anymore. It gives me a surprising amount of faith in the durability of society.
Yeah, because it could be really disruptive and dangerous.
Potentially, yeah.
But think of how many people will bring their whole body onto the field. How many streakers do we see? And yet people are much more likely to do that, seemingly, than to just throw a ball on the field, which is something that you can get away with. Like, you're not going to be...
Much more easily,
Yeah, like, I don't think they found the person who did this. You're just in the sea of fans, and you're throwing it. No one's... Unless someone reports you who saw you throw it, like, it's hard to tell from the field where it came from exactly. So... And it's not hard to smuggle a baseball in. You don't even have to smuggle it. It's not like contraband.
Buy one there.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm sort of surprised that people don't try to be jerks and interfere with play more often. I'm not saying they should. Like, I'm glad they don't. Please don't do this. I'm
grateful for their restraint. Yeah.
Yeah, but also, why don't people do this more? I wonder. There's so many intoxicated people in a ballpark.
Yeah.
I don't know why it doesn't happen more often. People enjoy if they're, if a visiting player hits a home run into the stands, and at least some parks, it's tradition. You throw it back onto the field. People like that.
Yeah.
Every now and then we see a particularly impressive throw made by a fan who's that's like a permissible situation where convention is you're allowed to do that and not get in trouble because play stopped and everyone understands.
There's not confusion.
Yeah. But this, I hope this doesn't spark anything. I hope this doesn't inspire copycats because this was confusing and I'm just, surprised it's so rare.
I am surprised also. If I had to hazard a guess, I think that part of it is that people aren't really sure what the literal ground rules for something like this would be. And so they don't know what the rules are. But I think that a lot of people have a sense that if a fan interferes, it's going to generally be to the benefit of the hitting team, although not always. But I think there's a worry that they would inadvertently create a situation where the team they're there to root for is put at a disadvantage because of their behavior. Whereas streaking, the only person you're really embarrassing is yourself, and maybe you don't feel embarrassed. Maybe you like the way your bits look, and so you're here they are, my bits. Yeah. But I am surprised just because, ballparks famously sell substances that can lead to the impairment of judgment, that it doesn't happen more often. It does give me faith in humanity in a weird way, which is nice because especially after the pandemic, anytime you're driving, you're we're worse now than we were before. And I don't know that that's empirically true, but that's how it feels. It feels like we're angrier, which is great behind the wheel, because that doesn't lead to anything nasty. So you drive to the ballpark and you're left with this sense that it's collapsing all around you and that we're just so close to the edge. But then nobody throws a baseball on the field, and you're maybe we're doing fine, actually. I mean, we're not, but in this small way, we are.
Yeah. We got to take our small victories where we can.
I'm just saying.
Celebrate human nature whenever humans give us the opportunity to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gotta lean into that.
And the last bit of banter I had, I guess, is also about the foibles of flawed humans. But did you see that Clayton Kershaw was upset because...
He was a little angry, wasn't he?
Yes, because prior to his start, so he started in St. Louis on Sunday, and prior to that game, the Cardinals played a video of Matt Adams's go-ahead 3-run homer off Kershaw in Game 4 of the 2014 NLDS.
Yeah.
That was the homer that ended up clinching the series for the Cardinals, eliminated the Dodgers. The Cardinals go on to the NLCS. So Kershaw was not pleased by that. No. He said, I think it's a little bush league, but I don't expect anything less from these guys.
Yeah.
So it's no worries, which, when you end with so it's no worries.
Don't put it in the paper I was mad.
Yeah, exactly. But if he was mad, he channeled that rage quite effectively because he had his best start of the season.
Yeah.
And he threw 5 scoreless, struck out 7, and the Dodgers got the win. And I guess he got the last laugh. And, if they had shown that clip one time, I'd say, no harm, no foul. It's fine. Like, it's relevant. It's the Dodgers are in town. Kershaw's pitching. Here's a good moment for your franchise. Why not hype up the fans by showing it? But the thing was, they showed it on a loop for several minutes. Yeah. And see, normally I might be inclined to say, oh, look, it's trolling. It's good natured, or at least like this is the sort of sports trolling that I can get on board with and, just take it and chuckle about it and don't be a red ass or whatever. But several minutes on a loop, that is a little bush league. I think I'm with Kershaw. This is actually a bit bush.
So I think a couple of things about this. The first thing that I think is that I saw that there were some Cardinals fans who were like trying to like take the piss out of Kershaw for reacting, which I found funny because this is only fun for you if he reacts, right? If he doesn't say anything about it, then you haven't had your fun, right? Because the reason you applaud this and find it to be, a fun little snarky bit of business is that he gets flustered by it and is like, grumpy. You want him to be a red ass. You want to be able to do the don't put it in the newspaper I was mad meme. Like you want to be able to meme. And in order to meme, he has to provide you grist for the meme, right? You need to put grist in the meme mill. Yeah. I do find it kind of funny. Like I know that start was meaningful within the context of that postseason, but like, is it a successful trolling if you're prior World Series win came before that start?
Right.
Like, are you able to really, do you have a leg to stand on? Also, like, here's the thing about it. The Dodgers just won the World Series.
Yeah.
They're not they have not fallen on hard times. They have, in fact, won 2 World Series since that happened, which is 2 more than you have won. So there's that piece of it, too, where I'm just like, this is like effective trolling in the micro, even setting aside the fact that you then lost. Like it's still a little bit of snarky business and fine, but like in the broader context of your 2 franchises, it does read a little funny, and it also reads funny within the broader context of this season because like the Dodgers, sure, they're in a tighter division race than any of us I think anticipated, but they're still first in the NL West and have won 40 games. And like you're looking up at the Cubs. Yeah. No, your season has gone better than I think a lot of people, including me, thought it would. So like props to the Cardinals for that. And I think a little bit of, friendly or not so friendly, like joshing is fine. I think that like there are teams that don't like each other, and it's okay if they don't like each other, and they might behave a little differently toward that team than others. But it is kind of funny. I don't know. Like, what is Kershaw supposed to say? I guess like. I don't know.
Yeah, you got me. I don't know.
You got me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I'll just have to look at my 2 rings as comfort, and like it is. That's maybe overstating the case slightly because it's not like he had a ton to do last year. But, it's just it's a funny thing. It's sort of, I'm fine with shit talking. I think shit talking is fine. I think that we can sometimes be a little sensitive to shit talking in a way that like we could let things sort of wash over us in a less confrontational way. There is something like pretty mean about that I am like kind of surprised by. It just feels like it feels very pointed, and you're right. The repetition is really what moves it to something where I'm like, that's kind of nasty, like, so I don't know. I guess I'm glad Kirsch won. Like it's quite a way to rise to it.
I also, if I had to bet, I kind of feel like the fact that he had that start on that day was maybe not a complete coincidence. I know the stereotype of stat heads is, oh, the players are just robots and it's all random number generator and they just do their thing and they get better results some days than other days. But Kershaw seems to me like a guy I wouldn't want to piss off. Like he's just very focused, very intense. Yeah. I could absolutely see him taking that personally in a Michael Jordan kind of way.
I mean, like, how else could you take it?
Yeah. Oh, sure. And just channeling that effectively. Right. Now, I guess you could say, given his postseason record, maybe the more amped up he is, maybe that's not the best thing for him because he's already at such a high level. And in fact, that was kind of, I think, Andy McCullough's thesis in his book about Kershaw is just that, you know, if you have regular Kershaw who's already the way that he's wired, and then you get to playoff Kershaw and you're just kind of in the red and maybe it's not actually beneficial at that point. Right. But I don't know, like if you could rerun this game somehow without the Cardinals taunting Kershaw repeatedly before the game, I think I would bet on his game score being lower. I'm not going to say like, you know, he would have been bad and it was the difference between him being bad and being good, but I got to think like a little extra rage. Who knows? Maybe that's what he needed these days.
I also think it's so first of all, like maybe I'm misunderstanding the history of the St. Louis Cardinals, but I also feel like the Cardinals have like a heated, venom-filled rivalry, but it's with the Cubs, right? Like, isn't that their main? So save this bile for your real rival. You know, like keep that special and toxic. What are you doing having that spill over into a regular season game like against the Dodgers? Like relax. Save this stuff for the Cubs. What are you doing over there? So that's one thing. And then the other thing of it is like it is sort of funny. You know, there have been like the relative fortunes of these two franchises, but it also feels a little weird to be doing this at like this juncture in Kershaw's career where it's like he's kind of an elder statesman. This is probably his last ride. He's not what he was. He certainly isn't what he was in 2014.
Matt Adams retired last year.
Right. And so it's just sort of like it's also it's a weird flex because you're like, you know, you're talking about a time when you got the guy. Okay, great. But it's a lot easier to get the guy now. And then pretty embarrassing given that it's easier to get him and then you couldn't get him, you know? Yeah. This is always the risk of talking too. It's like sometimes it backfires because you don't win the game and then you just have to sit there being like, well, you know, I tried. It's like, what if that shot hadn't gone in and then Halliburton had done the choke thing? Like, he'd hear about that for the rest of his career. Probably, you know, I'm talking about basketball now in a game that's over. I know, you know, because you're an all sports head now. Like you are a consumer of all sports. But you've been watching any of the Stanley Cup, Ben?
I have. Playoff hockey. It's the best.
Can I ask this is, I swear it's related. And I know that basketball and hockey are different sports, just in case anyone's like, weren't you just talking about the NBA finals? So, sorry to all the Knicks fans. Bing bong? Is that what you all say? Bing bong?
Yep, that's it.
Bing bong. Well, hopefully Bing Bong gets to red again sometime. You've been watching some of the Stanley Cup here? You've been, so, and you know quite a bit about hockey, actually. Well, you know, let me rephrase. You know so much more about hockey than I do.
Maybe.
And I know this, here's one thing I know about hockey, that last year it was these same teams, right? The Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers. Weird to have a Florida team good at hockey, but we'll let that go. I can say that as someone who used to have a hockey team in Arizona and doesn't anymore. These two, and spoiler for everyone who didn't watch the Stanley Cup last year, the Panthers won. The Edmonton Oilers did not. They have a number of very good players, but also these two teams seem to fiercely hate each other. And boy, are they looking for every opportunity they can get to just like kick the living shit out of each other. My God. Hockey, we talk about how violent football is, and it's definitely more violent than hockey just from a pure impact perspective. But some of these boys, I'm like, it's a good thing it takes a while to get a skate off, or some of you might end up making some choices you regret.
Yeah, it's not quite Four Nations face-off level animosity, I guess, but it's up there. So
intense. Yeah. Anyway,
there's some history. There's some beef, definitely.
Yeah. I would like I say this as someone who doesn't have a strong opinion about it, but I'd like it if the Oilers could win. It's weird that a Canadian team hasn't won the Stanley Cup in such a long time. That seems strange.
Yeah, we did a full hang-up segment about that while I'm plugging that other sports podcast.
Yeah.
We talked to Kim Eng. That could be relevant to some of our listeners here. We talked about AUSL, the softball league that she's a commissioner of, and MLB just invested in. So
very cool
softball banter and an interview on that episode. I'll link to it on the show page. By the way, one data point in support of my Clayton Kershaw channeled the rage and the trolling only made him stronger take. He did throw his fastest fastball of the season.
I was just about to say, did he throw harder?
In that game. He reached back for a little extra, and he fired one in there at 91.3 miles per hour.
That's his high?
That's his high this season.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. It was fast enough. All right.
It was fast enough.
Last thing for this episode, people have been clamoring.
Clamoring.
I was the one holding us back from talking about a TV show.
Only briefly.
Yeah, but sometimes it works the other way.
Yeah.
But this time, you watched the season of Poker Face before I did, and there was a baseball episode 5 of season 2.
Yeah.
And it's called Hometown Hero, and it's a baseball episode, a fully baseball episode. And so people have been writing in and asking us to discuss it and or critique it.
Yes.
And I don't have a huge amount to say about this episode, but I did finally catch up with the second season long enough to watch this episode.
Yeah, I
haven't watched the entire season.
Yeah.
We did a Patreon bonus episode some time ago about the first season of Poker Face, if you want to go back and catch up on that. But this episode specifically, we can discuss, I guess, what we thought of it as an episode, but also what we thought of the depiction of baseball. So this was written by Tony Tost, who is the showrunner this season. This is the first episode he had written. He was formerly the guy in charge of Longmire, a show that I quite enjoyed for several seasons. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I didn't watch that.
It was directed by John Dahl, also the first Poker Face episode he had done. It was not my favorite episode of Poker Face, I will say that much, despite the baseball connection. But the baseball, I have a couple notes, but
I have a couple notes.
It was not an egregious representation of baseball. Yeah.
No, it definitely wasn't. It was not one that felt like it was like designed to make. Here's what I'll say. I think that many of the quibbles that I have about the baseball piece of this episode are excusable within the context of many of the people who watch Poker Face not being baseball fans and requiring a bit of explanation of things. And I think that there were parts of it that were done well. I will say that I think this season is like down a little bit relative to last season. Still enjoying it, certainly, but I don't think that it's quite as strong as the last season was. So some of it is just maybe a general downgrade. So we should lay out. So within the episode, should we do a little plot summary? And then
and I guess for those who have not seen Poker Face, which is a streaming series on Peacock created by the great Ryan Johnson, and it's kind of an ode to Columbo. It is a How Catch 'em. So it's a detective procedural. You see the crime committed, the murder, someone dies, you see how it happens, and then the hook is how that person gets caught.
Yes.
And Charlie Cale is the lead character of this show, played by the excellent Natasha Lyonne.
Yes.
And her gimmick, because, you know, every detective show has to have some gimmick, is that I guess it's not even the most original gimmick, but it's a great show. It's just she can tell when people are telling the truth or lying.
Yes.
She just has a special inherent ability to unfailingly know when someone is lying. And so she's kind of a drifter. She's just itinerant. She's going from place to place. She keeps getting odd jobs. And wherever she goes in classic crime show procedural tradition, crimes get committed. The murder rate around Charlie, through no fault of her own, is sky high.
Sky high.
And she just stumbles across a crime, and she's not an official investigator or anything, but she can't help but help out because she hears people lying when a crime is committed.
Right.
And very often she's like present in or around the scene of the crime, it turns out. And maybe she knew the victim or she knows the perpetrator. And so she unravels the mystery and gets to the bottom of it by the end of the episode. So it's very lightly serialized. There is a larger overarching story, which they've kind of retired in this second season, at least to this point. And mostly, though, it's episodic. It's just, murder of the week, essentially, mystery of the week, or it's not even really a mystery. But in this one, she gets a gig as a ball girl at a minor league park for the Montgomery Cheesemongers.
Yes.
And she is just settling into this life. She's floating around aimlessly. She doesn't know what she's going to do with herself. She catches on here. There is a conspiracy of some of the minor league players because the Cheesemongers are a terrible team and they're on a near historic minor league losing streak.
Yes.
And so they decide, 5 of them just decide to throw a game, or 5 games, actually. And there's a little bit of sports betting commentary here,
because that part I liked.
They succumb to the temptation because they can bet on this 5-game parlay where if they lose all of those games, then they make 10 times what they bet. And these are all like baseball dead enders, they're running out of rope. And the main guy, who's played by Simon Rex, is Rocket Russ Waddell, who was a former top prospect, nicknamed Rocket after Roger Clemens, and he threw 100-mile-per-hour fastballs, and he's lost it, and he's just playing out the string here, and he's getting down to his last game, and the team's going to cut him, and so he has to lose his last game, but then a young hotshot prospect gets promoted to that level, and he's going to get that start, and he's not in on that conspiracy. And so they have to figure out what to do.
Right. And in order to sort of throw his game without telling him about the gambling conspiracy, they spike his bubble gum with LSD.
Yes, they Doc Ellis him.
And
like Doc Ellis, he pitches extremely well.
Yes. So this is my primary beef with this episode, which is enough to know about Doc Ellis. He threw a no-hitter while on LSD. But, it wasn't a clean no-hitter, right? It was an incredibly sloppy game that Doc threw. He hit a bunch of guys, whacked a bunch of guys. It was not a good day out. I mean, it was, but it wasn't, right? It wasn't a performance that seemed like it should result in a no-hitter just because of the sloppiness of it. And it's funny. And this guy who they have play Felix Domingo, is good at that part, has the ugliest arm action I've ever seen in my entire life. A freaking shot putter out there. What?
Yeah.
They couldn't find a guy who really had been a ball player?
Even by the standards of actors playing
pretty bad
baseball guys. Yeah, the actor was good, quite charming.
Yes.
Brandon Perea is his name.
Yes.
And they kind of played with it during the outing because they had him suddenly throw sidearm. It was he was just doing all sorts of stuff and it was working because he was high. But his natural delivery was woof. Yeah.
Yeah, it's woof. And so in the course of this episode, he throws a great game. They end up losing anyway because of the catcher who was in on the conspiracy, warning the other team's hitter and sort of alerting him to what the play is going to be. And then the other guys who were in it intentionally misfield the ball. And they win by losing. The conspirators win by the team losing. And they make this money. And then it becomes clear to Felix Domingo, what is going on, because one of the members of the conspiracy is something of adult and is trying to figure out what his share of the winnings is going to be, and so does math to that end in Felix Domingo's little notebook, because we are given to understand that in addition to everything else, like him being a great promising prospect, like, you know, he's paying attention to the weather and he's journaling and he has sort of a, you know, modern pitcher air to him, right? He's incorporating metrics and also journaling and this stuff. And so when he comes to discover that this has gone on, he confronts Russ, who is trying to find the remnants of the gum so that there is not evidence of them having interfered with his start. And he confronts the guy, and he, being Russ, Rocket, throws a baseball at the back of his head 100 miles an hour, and it kills him. And that's how he dies.
Yes.
They
Ryan Weathers
checked on Ryan Weathers. What's going on?
Yeah.
And then sets up the scene to make it look like this was a pitching machine accident. So here's another issue. Why is this pitcher taking batting practice? Like in order for it.
Yeah.
What
That's
are we
my
doing?
main issue with this episode. And I know, you know, if you're not a baseball person, and probably many people watching this series or not, then that probably wouldn't stand out to you. But this is, as far as we can tell, this is an affiliated team, right? I mean, I guess it wouldn't make much of a difference if it were indie ball or whatever. Like in the minors,
it would though, because of sort of the way they set up these co-conspirators. Like that only works if they're in affiliated
ball.
True.
Yes, that is true. Yeah, but I just mean in terms of a pitcher hitting, like. DH is everywhere in the minors these days. And so since this does seem to be set in the present, then it would be weird that this hotshot young pitching prospect is taking batting practice at all. And no one bats an eye at that. It's just, and he's there like late at night, after hours, no one else is there, and no one questions, why is this top pitching prospect taking batting practice or like extra batting practice? Why would he be taking batting practice at all? I mean, maybe just for fun. If he likes hitting, I guess he could stand in there. There are probably some hitters who just like swinging a bat from time to time, but it does seem quite odd that he would be there like late at night taking BP as a pitcher. So that was the number one thing that I think just it seemed discordant.
Yes, it seemed discordant. Here's another thing about it that seemed discordant. I appreciated the commentary on betting, but like, first of all, these guys are so not subtle about having won a great deal of money in the clubhouse the next day. You'd think that they would try to like be low key, at least at work.
Yeah. Well, one of them is, as you said, canonically adult. So that kind of makes sense. But
but like they're walking in fancy clothes and like there's evidence around. Also, they're in affiliated ball, or at least they appear to be. And I know that like there's a little bit of trickeration on their part in terms of like how these bets are being placed, but presumably they were being monitored for betting. We know that guys got in the minors for this stuff, right?
In fact, some of them did and just returned or just got reinstated after a year of suspension.
Released.
that too.
Almost uniformly.
Not all of them, but yeah.
Yeah. So like that part of it too, I was like, they're being awfully cavalier with this in a number of different directions. Although I did appreciate like a pop culture reminder so soon after the reinstatement of Pete Rose about what the number one rule is that you never break. I was like, that's right, writers of Poker Face, you've got it. And so then, like Charlie ends up taking LSD-laced bubblegum and she sees BJ Novak. And I will say, I want one of those cheesemonger hats, man. Those cheesemonger hats are great. They are so cool.
I thought they did a decent job of representing just minor league teams these days with the wacky names and the atmosphere and everything.
Yes.
Carol Kane is like the local owner and
amazing.
Yeah. Great, kind of underutilized in this episode as guest stars in Poker Face go. But and there's this whole story. I guess I appreciated the fact that team is seen as tenuous. I mean, it seems like it's the upper minors most likely because you're probably not going to have these like old guys in the lower minors, but it seemed like they were kind of riffing on just teams getting contracted these days. Like this team, it's kind of a touch and go existence. And I liked the idea of, just time and your career, and it's fleeting, and your sports dreams can depart, and one day you're the hotshot prospect, and then the next day you're on your way out and you've lost your stuff and all of that. So I did kind of appreciate some aspects of the depiction of minor league baseball here and its like significance to the town and everything. But yeah, that was the one thing that really stood out to me, the pitcher taking batting practice, which is quite key to the plot.
Yes.
And then secondarily, this bothers me less, but the main guy, Rocket, the pitcher, so his whole thing is that he can't even touch 90, you know?
Yeah.
He's like latter-day Kershaw when he's not mad at the Cardinals video operator. And so he finds it somehow when he needs to, like when he's targeting someone, when he gets angry, again, much like Kershaw, he's able to get some of his speed back, although in this case it's like lethal and he's suddenly topping 100 again.
Yeah.
The explanation, at some point a fan explains the trajectory of his career and says that he had the yips.
Yes.
And then explains what the yips are. Yeah. And that's okay, except that it seems like the explanation for his low velo is that he had the yips.
Yes.
And that seemed a little strange to me. It's, you know, because he says at one point, there's nothing wrong with my arm. It's all psychological.
Right.
I don't really think of that being the common manifestation of the yips. Usually it's about wildness. It's about control or the lack thereof. It's not so much about like, you forgot how to throw really hard. And so like he can throw in a controlled way, but only 83 or something. I guess if you had the yips, maybe if you compensated for your yips by just really slowing down your arm action and not having your natural delivery, and maybe like you could throw in the 80s or something without being wild, and that wouldn't work either. But I don't know. Like usually with guys with the yips, it's not that they lose their ability to throw hard. It's just that they can't find the strike zone anymore. So I guess you could say that maybe he's compensating for his inability to find the strike zone now by just, you know, almost unwillingly, he's restricting himself. He's throwing less hard so as not to hurt someone or something. Maybe, you know, he's so in his head that but it's kind of an odd depiction of the yips.
Especially because, like, I get on some level that having the fastball, like having the velo not there and then having it re-emerge in this moment where he's like panicked and trying to figure out how to silence this guy who has figured out their plot and is demanding all the money. Okay, fine. But like that whole thing works just as well if he like can throw really hard but doesn't have command, but then he is able to, with pinpoint accuracy, nail this dude in the back of the head. Like that works as a story. That works as a plot device. But I think it's harder. It would be harder for you to do the like, wow, he can't make it to the majors. Because like if you're throwing 101 and you don't know where it's going, like you're probably still going to have some kind of big league career, even if it's only very brief. But they could have had him like called up and he gets a taste, but he can't get back there because he can't command. Like there's a version of this that works.
Yeah, I guess they needed it to work this way because part of the way that this turns is that like no one suspects him because this ball that the pitcher gets drilled by is going, like the corners reporter, whatever, says that it had to have been at least 100 miles per hour or something. And so no suspicion falls on him initially because he can't throw that hard anymore. But then Charlie gets suspicious because this is an old pitching machine and it doesn't have that kind of speed either. But I guess you needed him to not be able to throw that hard and then to suddenly regain his throwing that hard. So if he had just had an arm injury or something, like your typical washed out prospect, or if he had the usual yips where he throws really hard but doesn't know where it's going, then he might still have come under suspicion because like he throws, or even, you know, people might have thought, oh, he threw one wildly and it was an accident and he's covering it up or something. So you kind of needed him to be like throwing 80 something until somehow that mental block is removed.
I guess, but
in extreme situations. But yeah, it's kind of convoluted because they had to make it work in that specific way. And so they sort of massaged the yips story a little bit to make it happen.
And then, like, look, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a police officer. But the way they get him is, like, Charlie lies. and says that there's a big league scout there. And then he throws 101 in the game in front of the scout. As an aside, like the radar guns that got used in this episode were amazing. Like, it's so funny. They're not, that's not what they... Yeah.
No, I think maybe that's part of the joke because it's an undercover cop is the scout and he has like a speedometer like a cop would have, I guess. So
yeah, and like they make him look like he's straight out of like 1970 as both a scout and a cop. Like somehow he looks like both simultaneously. And then like he throws 101 and the guy immediately goes like, we got him. And I'm like,
the jig is up.
I don't think that that's enough for you to like convict someone of murder.
Seems
the
pretty
fact
circumstantial.
That he happened to be able to throw.
Yeah, the ending was kind of abrupt.
Goofy.
It's one of those episodes where often a Poker Face episode will have like, even if you know what happened, there's like a little bit of an extra twist or something that happens over the course of the episode. And this one, there wasn't really. Like there was nothing really surprising happened. And then the resolution, as you're saying, was sort of unsatisfying because it was like, this is not an open and shut case. You didn't nail this guy. He's acting as if he thinks he's caught and everyone else is, but not really. I don't think this is going to hold up. So it felt a little underbaked.
It felt a little underbaked. And look, we're being critical. I like this show. I still like this show. And like there have been some episodes this season that I thought have been like very good. But I do think that like it has been down in general. The Mulaney one I thought was really strong. Like I really liked the Mulaney one. I do think that there's just like a propulsion issue with the show now because like the conceit of the first season, the reason she's on the road is that she has like inadvertently caused, it wasn't her fault, but like has sort of inadvertently caused a gangster's son to jump off a building. And now she's on the run from the casino gangster. And then like that kind of gets resolved, but then she's on the run from like the mob. But then that kind of gets resolved. And then it's like, well, what's driving this forward other than her like wanting to see the country?
Which I guess with procedurals, you don't need something to tie them together. It's just, someone's a detective, someone's a doctor, whatever it is. There's a new case of the week. Now, in Charlie's case, she's not a detective. So it's, it's extra strange that she keeps running into these mysteries. But that's just the conceit of the show. And it's kind of winking and knowing, and that's fine. So if the writing of the episode and the guest stars, et cetera, and Charlie's always great. So like if that hook is strong enough, then I don't necessarily need some underlying motivation. It's just, this was a fun little case that is introduced and resolved in the same episode. And in theory, baseball show, that's great. When a show we like becomes a full-fledged baseball show. And you had pitched this when we did our Patreon pod on season 1. I think you suggested that something like this, like a baseball episode. Did you even specify a minor league park? Or I think I did. I think you may have.
I think I did. And to be clear, I'm not like saying that like this idea got ripped from us or anything like that. There's no allegation here. But yes, I did. I thought that it would be a great setting. And I was relieved because, part of this, as I think we mentioned a couple of months ago, like, a couple of images from this or moments of this episode were in the trailer for this season. And in one of them, you see the pitcher who ends up throwing the game on LSD do a backflip. And I was like, oh, God, this is going to be freaking Savannah Bananas themed. And it wasn't. He's just on LSD, He's not a banana. He's just on drugs. So I was relieved that it wasn't banana themed because I was like, I don't need any banana. I'm all in my poker face.
Meg did deploy her bananas take on our most recent Patreon bonus episode while we're teasing those. So if you do want to hear her fuller thoughts and mine on the bananas.
Yeah, you offered yours too.
You can do that.
Yeah. But anyway, this is, I think, still worth watching. And like much of the baseball was handled well. And I agree with you that like in terms of the vibe of a minor league park and team and some of the shenanigans that can result from that I thought they had dialed in very well. Ego Wodum has like a really funny cameo as like the announcer, and their sponsor, they're the cheesemongers. Their sponsor is this like Velveeta like product, and there's a running bit about her like suffering physical debilitation as a result of this like faux cheese. That I thought worked well. Again, the odds of us getting one now seem low because we didn't have like effusive praise to offer for this episode, but get at me with a cheesemongers hat, you guys. But, you know, it could have been a little bit better. And I think that if one or two things had been shifted ever so slightly, it would have been even more successful. And like, I like that kid who plays, he was in Nope, right? Who played the good young pitcher. He was in Nope. He was great in Nope.
Yes.
Nope is great. People should watch Nope.
Yeah. Update. This actually comes from Kyle, Patreon supporter. Clarke is now 9 for 9 on roughly 50-50 catches. He's just gotten an enormous number of opportunities in a short span of time. Yeah, that's kind of what it is. And as you noted, the robbery was not actually one of his harder opportunities, according to StatCast, which may or may not be accounting for all the factors there. But arguably not even his most impressive play, even though in a way it was.
Yeah, in a way.
All right. Didn't mean to shortchange Jackie Bradley Jr., by the way. He had an excellent Denzel Clarke-esque catch as well. Also, Craig Kimbrel signed a minor league deal with the Rangers after we recorded. You know, there's one gag that got me in that Poker Face episode. There's a runner, not a base runner, but a running joke throughout the episode about the minor league manager, who's played by Gil Birmingham, a.k.a. Thomas Rainwater in Yellowstone. And it's implied that he is unwillingly in an open marriage. At one point, he's reading an Open Marriage for Dummies book, something like, so you find yourself in an open marriage. It's not really a focus. It's just a throwaway thing. But then you get to this big pep talk that he delivers before the climactic game, and he says this.
It's probably our team's last game in this great park. So let's go out there and stop this losing streak. Yeah. Let's win for Russ.
Yeah. Let's fucking go, Rocky.
For Felix. For the Lubinsky family.
Yeah.
And for these fans who have suffered with us for all these goddamn years. Yeah. And while we're at it, let's win one for good old-fashioned monogamy.
Woo! Yeah.
Made me laugh. Okay, that'll do it for today. Thanks as always for listening, and special thanks to those of you who support the podcast on Patreon, which you can do by going to patreon.com/effectivelywild and signing up to pledge some monthly or yearly amount to help keep the podcast coming, help us stay almost ad-free, and get yourself access to some perks, as have the following 5 listeners: Kendall Heibel, Thomas Fu, Enrique Wallace, Matt G. Hall, and Tessa Strickland. Thanks to all of you. Patreon perks include access to the Effectively Wild Discord group for patrons only, the aforementioned monthly bonus episodes, playoff live streams, prioritized email answers, discounts on merch and ad-free FanGraphs memberships, and so much more. Check out all the offerings at patreon.com/effectivelywild. If you are a Patreon supporter, you can message us through the Patreon site. If not, you can contact us via email. Send your questions, comments, intro and outro themes to podcast@fangraphs.com. You may have heard a new intro theme on this episode, courtesy of listener Garrett Crone. Thanks to Garrett. You can rate, review, and subscribe to Effectively Wild on iTunes and Spotify and other podcast platforms. You can join our Facebook group at facebook.com/group/effectivelywild. You can find the Effectively Wild subreddit at r/effectivelywild. And you can check the show notes at FanGraphs or the episode description in your podcast app for links to the stories and stats we cited today. Thanks to Shane McKeon for his editing and production assistance. We'll be back with another episode soon. Talk to you then.
Romantic, pedantic, and hypothetical, semantic and frantic, real or theoretical. They give you the stats and they give you the news. It's a baseball podcast you should choose. Effectively Wild is here for you. About all the weird stuff that players do. Authentically strange and objectively styled. Let's play ball. It's Effectively Wild. It's Effectively Wild. It's Effectively Wild.